Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Psycho Science Podcast. I'm your host, Alex Ostrowski, and on this podcast, we talk about a little bit of whatever I want, anything from personal lifestyle and obviously stand-up paddleboarding. Today, I want to talk about something that I love talking about. Honestly, if there's anything that I would prefer to talk about, it would be this topic, and that is just overall like environmental sustainability as us as individuals and what we can do, the tiny little things that we can do in our lives to help the environment and to also spread awareness on these issues. Also, I have to do this episode really quick because it seems like there is a storm coming in, and I would much prefer that the audio not have any rain sounds in it, so I'm gonna have to definitely speed this one up. But we got a good amount of information, and I loved outlining this episode, and I'm going to love filming it as well and talking about it. This episode is about the 3 R's: reuse, reduce, recycle, specifically in that order. Now, a lot of people only think about the last R, recycle, when in reality, there's so many things that we can do before we reach recycling that can help the environment and also save us a little bit of moolah, because saving money is always good to do. I want to talk about each one and talk about kind of what it means for people, and then I also want to go into how I incorporate these things into my life. I am currently on a road to minimalism. I don't think I always say that. I always say I'm on the road to minimalism. I personally don't think that I am going to reach the point where someone's going to be like, oh yeah, you're a minimalist. Just because people are really picky with what that means, number one. And second, there's things that I prefer or like purchasing that maybe technically does not fit in with a minimalist lifestyle. I like to think of myself as being in between minimalism and the Marie Kondo method. Like I like to keep things and buy things that spark joy, but also do it in a conscious and limited way. That's going to be what I say from now on. But right now, I think I'm currently in like the normal consumption era of my life. Like there's things that I'm buying, but I'm also kind of nearing and also kind of in the underconsumption phase. I do believe that I've kind of upped my purchasing just a little bit just because I've been trying to fix my hair. My hair has been falling out for the entire year, and I'm just starting to take care of it, and it's been helping, but I had to buy a few products to be able to do that. And I'll also admit that I am not perfect on this matter. I'm 19, still figuring out what I like, and that also means that I am buying things that I regret, and I'm doing that more often just because I don't have that experience of knowing what products I like and don't like and understanding which ones will ultimately last me longer. And also, again, I'm starting my life. There's things that I'm buying for the first time, so obviously there's going to be a lot more things entering my life than items entering my life when I was like a teenager, because I didn't need much. So I tried not to beat myself up about it. And I also know that I cannot be perfect, which we'll get into that a little bit later. Also, this year I was finally able to get a job, so I was able to buy things that I've been wanting for a very long time. And these are things that have served me so well, so well. At the beginning of the year, I think I talked about this like every single episode, I bought a Kindle. That was an amazing purchase. Anytime that I do buy things, I try to see if I can get it secondhand first. But yeah, since I kind of like at the beginning of the year purchased everything that I wanted to purchase, everything has kind of slowed down a little bit. It amped up a little bit once I realized that I was messing up my hair, but after that, I don't know if I'm going to buy much for the remaining like 2 months of the year. So anyways, let's go back to the topic. I just wanted to get that disclaimer because people can be like, oh, you say all this stuff, but like, look at what you have, look at everything that you have, you're totally not like a conscious consumer. And I'm like, okay, you don't know about my life. It's like just trying to like get that barrier of like all the little internet trolls being like, nah, you can't fight me on this one, I've already explained it. Today I want to talk about how I reduce, reuse, recycle in that order specifically, because again, a lot of people just think that it's recycling when nope, there's so many more things that go with it, and all those things go before recycling. Let's start with the first R, which is reduce. Now, I feel like I've talked about reducing a lot. There's a few episodes on my podcast about, what is it? Committing your life to your belongings. And a few more episodes. I've almost been doing this podcast for a year. So I'm already starting to forget about what podcast episodes I've posted about. A big thing to reduce your environmental toll, I guess you should say, and also to save money is to buy less things. Now, that is very, very obvious, and it's actually a lot easier than you think. And when I talk about this, I am mainly talking about non-necessary items. Obviously, necessary items are, of course, a necessity. So when I talk about these things, I definitely am talking about non-necessary items, just like second-tier items, if you know what I mean. But they can also, like what I talk about, can also be translated into like other aspects of your life and can translate into the area of necessary items. When it comes to non-necessary items, it is really easy to convince yourself that you need something, that you can buy something, that you're like, oh, you'll find an excuse for like, oh my goodness, like this item or this gadget, like this is perfect. This is the perfect thing to serve me that one singular purpose that I didn't really realize I was having an issue with until I found this item. And these can be things like plastic gadgets, like kitchen gadgets, you know what I mean? This can also be cheap clothing and also things that only serve one purpose, only have one job. And honestly, these things are very alluring, and I can't deny that. These things are super alluring, and I've bought things that have like only one singular purpose, and I'm like, what, I'm only gonna use this the one time every once in a while that I have to do this task? So here's a few ways to combat that feeling of like, oh, I really need this. Understand that many of these gadgets that you're seeing are just trends. And again, like I mentioned before, if you didn't realize you had a issue or a problem or something needed to be solved, you didn't realize that until you saw this item and was like, oh yeah, then you probably did not need that item. Ask yourself if it can be used for multiple things, because if you are bringing something into your space that's only used for one thing, it's just taking up space and not serving you a purpose for majority of its lifetime. If it only serves one purpose, really ask yourself if that 1% increase of convenience is worth bringing this thing into your life, spending the money to bring this into your life, and for then that item to last longer on this earth than you ever will. And ask yourself if there's something at home that you can alter or change or use that may work a little bit less, but hey, you save money and you help the environment and you introduce less things into your space. I feel like saving money, like not spending money on stupid things, environmental sustainability, and also like clutter and introducing things into your space, they're all kind of connected. So when you are like thinking about these things, I want you to think about all three of those things, because they all mean something. They all are connected in some way. You don't want to just think about the environmental issue. You don't want to just think about the money issue. Really, the only thing that people really think about is the money aspect of everything, and even then, depending on what it is, maybe people don't even care about how much it costs. But really think about how much it costs, if this thing will actually serve you a lot of purpose and have a fulfilled life, and also, is it worth bringing it into your space permanently for the time being, taking a spot in your space. Like, you can find a cheap item, right? But if there's the same item that costs a little bit more but will last 2 to 3 times longer than the cheaper product, it's much better to buy the more expensive product. You save money in the end. And obviously, I know that this can't be the thing for everything. I know that people sometimes cannot afford to buy the nicer things. I think the saying goes, it's like, it's expensive to be poor, just because people with less money cannot buy the nicer things, so they have to continuously buy them because they can only afford the cheaper form of that item. So let's talk about how I practice consuming less. This is something that I've been working on. I used to not be like this, but I've slowly been practicing and getting more conscious with what I am buying and bringing into my space, and how much money I'm spending, and the environmental impact and all that stuff. Number one, I give myself time to think about the purchase. A lot of times I see something and I'm like, oh my god, I want it. But I give myself a little bit of time. I throw it onto a list of things that I like. And if it's something that I keep on thinking about, or is something that I genuinely think that will serve me, then I'll go ahead and buy it. One of these examples was I got a mini fridge for my skincare. That seems like a completely unnecessary purchase for a lot of people, but my bathroom is in the darkest corner of the house. We live in a very humid area. My brother and I use it, so we use the shower, we use the sink. A lot of humidity and heat is stored in there, and I really do not want my skincare, my moisturizers and serums being in that environment. So I got a mini fridge to store them in, so it's like they're chilled and they don't have to be put in that environment. Because if you put your skincare in humid environments for like a prolonged period of time, for hot environments, all that stuff, the chemicals will start to separate and you don't want that. So I put it on a little list and I thought about it for a while, and I thought about the pros and cons and everything, and the pros outweighed the cons, so I ended up buying it. Number 2 is that I think about if it'll actually serve me a purpose. Like if I'm just buying something to buy something or because I think it's cute, this is mainly with decor, then I won't buy it, because what's the point? If it's not going to serve me a purpose, if it's just going to sit there and look pretty and collect dust, I don't necessarily want that. I do have an exception for Legos though, but depends on the Legos. I have to absolutely love the set to be able to have it in my area, in my space. Number 3 is when it comes to items that you have to refill or buy continuously or consistently. I only buy things if I run out of them, or if I'm just about to run out of them. That's when I will buy a replacement for them. Because I have a little rule for myself. It's like if I already have something, I'm not going to buy another one of those things. So for makeup, for example, I only have one powder, one mascara, one eyebrow gel. I only have one of everything, and that's because I don't allow myself to buy more than one item if they're both the same, you know? There's exceptions. For example, I have a white eyeliner and a black eyeliner, and those are very clear. That's very clear as to why I have both. But I have a rule for myself that I am only allowed to buy something once I run out of it, or I am just about to run out of it. So that kind of motivates me to use what I already have, because if I see something and I'm like, oh my god, I really like that, I really want that, oh, but I already have that at home, I already have a different version of it at home, I'm going to use up what I already have, and I will know what to buy when that thing is ran out. And I can experience the joy of buying something new, because that is something that I like. I like buying new things. It makes me feel really nice. Okay, now on to the next section, which is reusing. That is the second R of the 3 R's. It is reuse. Reusing looks really different for a lot of people. It is essentially just giving something a second life, third life, fourth life, depending on what it is, obviously. Reusing for some people can also be seen as buying secondhand items. Buying secondhand items not only saves you money, but it also helps the environment, because you are not adding new things to the shelf. You are buying things that already exist on this earth. Now, if you're like, what do you mean, Alex? Like, I'm buying things that are already on the shelf. Well, think about it as like the rule of supply and demand. When you decide to buy something new off the shelf, you are creating demand for that item, and you are creating demand for that item to be continuously produced, like consistently produced, so that that demand can be kept up with. So if you don't buy those things, if you don't buy off the shelf, there is less of an incentive to create that item. Therefore, production will be lower. Therefore, the environmental impact will be lowered. Obviously, one person is not going to change the entire production system of a company, but if everyone kind of does their little thing and practices all the little small steps, then there can be a change. There can be an impact. Reusing can also look like using items past what they were intended for and using them for new things. For example, my family, for a very long time, a lot of the shirts that we have, like worn down shirts from when I was younger, have been turned into rags. It's really funny watching my parents clean something, or me having to clean something with a t-shirt that I had when I was 9? So we use those shirts for rags. We give them a second life. So it saves us money from buying rags, and it also helps the environment because we don't create the demand to have rags on the shelf. Another example is that we have reusable napkins. Our napkins used to be like pillowcases or like cushion covers, and my mom and I one day just cut everything up and we sewed the napkins up, and now we have reusable napkins that we use for everything. We don't actually have paper napkins in the house, and we barely ever even have paper towels in the house. And then here are a few things that I do as an individual. These are a little bit smaller because at the end of the day, I am one person and I do live with my entire family, so I as an individual, my impact isn't that crazy. And I also don't do as much at the moment, again, because I live with my family, to where me as an individual has like such a high impact on the environment. But here are a few little things that I've done that I thought are neat. I made my own paper and journal from using old high school notes. This is it right here. All the paper I made by hand individually, and instead of all of my high school notes going to waste, I'm talking about this thick. So many notes were taken throughout my high school times. I did use my iPad for my senior year, but that still meant that there were 2 years where I took notes on paper, and I was able to reuse them and make a notebook. And now I use that notebook for work, and once I'm done with that notebook for work, I can just make paper out of that paper again. And now I collect every single little piece of paper. Instead of throwing it out, I collect it in the hopes that I will be able to make paper or reuse that paper to make new paper again in the future. I use old jars and containers for my plants. I have a lot of propagated plants around my room, so using old jars from food or spices, I have a few where there's sort of like old spices containers. That's a lot better than going out and buying jars just for having propagated plants in them. I've reused pillowcases to make little bags and pouches for myself. Like I have little cute little bags and have a little zipper, and I made them myself. And I didn't have to buy them, and I reused pillowcases to be able to make those. And this is a small one, but I did reuse cardboard and paper scraps to make little shark whale decor on my wall. So instead of buying room decor, I made it myself. And now on to the last part, where we reach our last R's, is recycle. Once you've gone through the reducing, once you've gone through the reusing, then you can start thinking about the recycling. Figure out if there are any programs locally to you that accept items to have them recycled. And then also knowing that, be more conscious of what you're buying, because if you're like, oh, that thing can't be recycled by my program, maybe I'll step away from buying that as much. Note that glass can be easier to recycle than plastic, and aluminum can be easier recycled than glass. And as a person that, again, still lives with their parents, and also the closest supermarket is like 30 minutes away, I do find it hard sometimes to be super consumer conscious when it comes to buying groceries, but I hope to change that in the future, whether I live by myself or I put in a little bit more effort and I talk to my dad and everything about how we go about buying groceries. Whenever topics like these come up, I feel really guilty for not doing more, because at the end of the day, there's so many more things that you can be doing. It's never ending, really, just the amount of things that you can do or should be doing. And there's always people telling you that, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should prioritize this, oh, that doesn't actually do much, like all these things. So many things, so much information, and you can feel guilty and also overwhelmed by everything. And the things that I talk about in this episode is very little to what we can actually do. There's so many things that we can do. There are things that we could be doing differently. There are things that we could be sacrificing more for the betterment of the environment. But I'm also very aware that as an individual, I do not make as much impact as the corporations that we are forced to interact with or forced to buy, because they essentially have a monopoly over everything that we buy. This doesn't mean that we should give up and to just not worry about our environmental footprint, our carbon footprint. It just means that we should not feel guilty for not doing enough or not doing as much as we quote unquote should be. I obviously believe that there are so many simple, tiny things that people can easily incorporate in their lives to just do a little bit less. As long as we do just a little bit throughout a little aspects of our lives, we can make more of an impact than we think. And also if we spread the awareness and talk about it and are very open about it. I don't know where I found this quote, but I'm going to tell you guys, and it pretty much explains everything of what I was just trying to say. It doesn't take one person doing it perfectly. It takes millions of people doing it imperfectly. And that's where I'm going to leave this episode off. Thank you so much for listening. Rate the podcast if you haven't already. Follow me on my socials. The World Championships is coming up, so pay attention to that. That's going to be super fun. I will be attending, which is great. This is the first World Championships I've ever attended. And I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Bye!